We are back again. A reminder, same one from yesterday. I have changed things up a little bit so that the organization might be a little bit easier for some people to follow. In the beginning of each lesson, I've got a place for your name and then step by step what I think you should do in order to be most successful with this lesson. Again, today we have some math notes for you to look at. As you can tell, we are looking to review the portion web, which we used as a tool in our sixth grade curriculum so that we can try to make a visual connection between fractions, decimals, and percents because they all are the same representation of a portion, just different names. And sometimes one is more usable or useful than the others, and so it's nice to be able to convert back and forth and do it accurately. So please review the math notes, and they continue on until almost to the end of the second page of today's assignment. With today's assignment, it says that we need to complete the representations of a portion web for each number below. An example for 2/3 is shown at right. You can draw these on your own paper. And then if you wish to take a picture and insert it into your document or send it to me via email, that's great. I'm going to take a piece of loose leaf type paper and I'm going to put this to the side so that I can still see my numbers that I need to do my portion web with. The first one that I have is 7/10. So I'm going to put this on my on my paper, and it's a fraction, so I'm going to put it at the top of my portion web, remembering that I don't have to do fancy portion webs. I just need to make sure they look like some kind of a triangle. And 7/10, if I read that correctly as a decimal, I know that to write it as a decimal, I write it 0 and 7/10, just like you see on my paper. The mathematical way to change 7/10 to a percent is to take that and multiply it times 100. And you read that up in your math notes, but it's always nice to hear it and see it in action. This would end up being 70%. And we've talked about how important it is to make sure that we're up on our place value. So in the middle here, I would write 7/10. And it's kind of squishy to write it in there, so I put it over onto the right side and I've drawn the arrow so you can see that I really do want it in the belly of that triangle. The next number that I have that I'm going to be looking at is 75/100. Now, I'm going to go ahead and draw my portion web triangle, and I like to try to be consistent in where I locate things, and my decimal on the first one was in the lower left corner of the triangle, so that is where I'm going to put my 75/100. And when I think about that, I think about money, and 75/100 reminds me of 3/4, so I could write it 3/4 up here, or I could simply write 75 over 100. And when I write 75 over 100, that really leads me into a super easy way to think about percents. Percents are always out of 100, and so I can take a look at that fraction and immediately write down there that it would be 75% as a representation for percent. I can double check that by multiplying 75/100 times 100, and that does give me 75, so I just checked my work. And then in the belly of the triangle, I'm going to write 75/100. All right, and now I'm going to move down and I'm going to do the 3/5 for you. And for 3/5, pretty quick for us to do this one. Really love using my giant 1 to change this into a number that has 10, 100, or 1,000 in the bottom so that I can make it into my decimal pretty easily. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/10 would be one way to write my fraction. And if I am using my correct pronunciation of my decimal, it is 6/10 written like that. And again, multiplying times 100, and that brings me to 60%. Inside my belly of my triangle, I would write 6/10. And the last one, I'm just going to start for you. We're going to write our 5/8 up on top. Get my portion web framework up there. And as I'm doing 5/8, in order to make this happen, I might want to either get a calculator, which I know you're at home, they're convenient, or I could actually do the math where I am writing down 5 divided by 8, and I am going to end up getting a decimal that should be 625 thousandths. Bring down another 0. And do my subtraction. Bring down another 0. And that would be 625 thousandths. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that problem. Oops. And then I'm going to let you finish this part and then what goes in the middle. The next part of our work for this assignment has us looking at problem 2-19. And 2-19 is asking us to use the names of fractions to rewrite each terminating decimal as a fraction. First, try to use what you know about place value to rewrite the fraction. So this decimal here is, and you don't have to write these out, but I'm going to write this one out for us, 19 hundredths. And when I write it out like that, it makes it super easy for me to write it as a fraction, 19 hundredths. All right? One more, and then I'm going to have you, let's do 2 more. This one is going to be 391 thousandths. And I'm going to write that 391 over 1,000. This one here is 1, and we have 10 hundred thousandths. So this is 1,000th. This one we have to look 10 hundred. It ends up, the last number in the decimal ends up in the thousandths place. So that's why this one would become 19 thousandths. This one, I would say 3/10. And this one, again, I'd say 524 thousandths. And there we go. If you want to double check to make sure that I did those correctly, you would take your numerator, pop it into your fraction, and divide by the number that I put in the denominator. Now it's time for you to do your independent work for this lesson, and look forward to seeing you back tomorrow to look at the lesson review video and our next lesson in chapter 2. Thank you.